name's John. I'm an alcoholic. I'm kidding. I'm not transitioning. My name's Shar. I'm an alcoholic. I go by she pronouns. My sobriety date is January 23rd, 2001. I have a sponsor. She has a sponsor, and this is my home group. I say those things mostly because we just do it all the time, but partly because those are the things that help keep me sober. I got a sobriety date, and I wanted to keep it. I have a sponsor. I tried the sponsorship thing by myself for a while. Sponsoring myself, it doesn't work very well. And I also had a sponsor for a while that didn't have a sponsor. So I don't have those things today. So those are things that are important for me to stay sober. So I want to share what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I think the problem started the day I was born. I was born breech, upside down and backwards. That's where the problem started. I blame my mother. Seriously, I'm wondering if someone should do research on that. I'm just saying. But the way I was like as a kid, my drinking and using career only lasted for 7 years. I went from, I thought I was a cute little Mormon kid, but I don't know if anyone else did. But if you were raised in the religion around here, you probably know what a little beehive president is, what a mind-made president is, what a laurel president. I was all of those things. Wore dresses every Sunday. I did put shorts on underneath them because I'm still a tomboy. And a dyke, I found out later. It's not like common knowledge. You don't just find that thing out. They don't hand you a card that tells you what you are. But so I ended up. So I'm going from that. I started using and drinking when I was 16 years old. So I'm the kid that goes to church every Sunday. I'm the kid that goes around to all the other kids that don't go to church on Sunday, and I'm asking them to come to church on Sunday. So that's what I looked like back then. The only thing that was different is inside I knew something was wrong with me. There's something different about me. Therapy started at a nice young age where they diagnosed me with being different and weird. That was a typical diagnosis. But what happened is at 16, I actually started out with weed. Weed was the first thing that was handed to me because that was a little easier to get when you're 16 than alcohol was. So that was the first thing that was handed to me. And I remember it did absolutely nothing. Didn't understand the point. What was the point of that? Apparently I didn't smoke enough. So I just kept trying. I'm going to call my stepmom back later. So, then I soon found alcohol. I hung out with a lot of older people that were a lot older than me. It's true to this day. Most people that I hang out with are quite a bit older than me. Maybe I thought I was a grown-up. I don't know. Tried to grow up quick, but I ended up hanging out with a lot of people that were already in their 20s. They could buy alcohol. They could buy liquor. So I started out drinking, and I remember the one time that it was really clear to me that I loved alcohol. I was drinking blackberry brandy. That's just heartburn right there. Yep, I see the faces. It's heartburn. Blackberry brandy, and we didn't have glasses. We just drank out of the bottle. And I remember I was with one of my friends, and her ex-boyfriend had come over, and he was pissed. He was down at the door, and I remember feeling like 10 feet tall and bulletproof, like, I'll take care of this. I got it. I'll take care of him. I just remember feeling like, even though I felt like a chicken shit the rest of the time. I felt scared all the time. I was always anxious, always nervous. But when I drank alcohol, I felt like everything's going to be okay and I could take on the world. And I wasn't scared anymore. And it's really hard not to swear. There's a lot of edits. Like trying to be respectful to the church, but it's just not me. Anyway, my drinking and using career. So I ended up at Beehive, Mind-Made, Laurel President, seminary graduate. So that's that kid. And in 7 years, I went from that to homeless on the street, living in my truck. When I say homeless on the street, I'm saying selectively homeless, because I could have gone home if I wanted to. I just had to clean up, but I wasn't going to do that. So I stayed living in my vehicle that my dad paid for and paid the insurance on. Yeah. So he was a nice enabler. It was nice. I remember being, it didn't take very long for alcohol to start to catch up with me. I started getting into a lot of trouble really early. I got into a lot of trouble before I even found alcohol as a solution. But I got in trouble afterwards, and I wasn't a very good criminal. I got caught all the time. I went to jail a lot. But I had a really nice, and by nice, I mean really codependent, enabling father who I would call crying, and he would come pick his daughter up from jail. The one time that they couldn't pick me up from jail, I remember him showing up with my little sister and my stepmom to come visit, and my sister made sure that she wore her BYU shirt so that everyone knew that she was not in any way condoning. I was like, really? Did you wear that in here? You wore the BYU shirt? Okay. So, anyway, my thoughts are kind of all over the place, sorry, so I'll try to keep it in order, but it might just come out wherever. I'm hoping God kicks in at some point, but right now you just got self-centered Shar, so we'll give it a minute. I'll keep talking until it's his turn. I keep drinking and using. I'm starting to make choices that I don't want to be. I remember back in the 90s, there was a lot of these commercials that would come out because they were trying to deter people from using drugs, and they were like, nobody wants to be a junkie. Nobody says I want to be a junkie when I grow up. It's like this track runner. And then all of a sudden they're running from the cops, And I remember that really strongly, well, what's a junkie? I wanted to know, well, what does that entail? I didn't want to be a track star, but I was curious about what you had to do to run from the cops. I was really just a small-time criminal that, I sold enough stuff to pay for my own habit, my own addiction, my own alcohol. I stood outside the liquor store and asked all the people older than me, can you buy me a bottle? You can have the rest of the money, And then one day alcohol started to catch up with me, and in the big book, I think it's Bill that's talking about alcohol turned on me and all but cut me to ribbons. And that's what alcohol and drugs did to me. Something happened in my brain. I wasn't someone who wanted to just have one thing in my system. I had to have multiple things in my system. I needed to be able to go to work, so in order to go to work, I needed to pick me up, but I was a little too drunk, so I needed this to pick me up, and then I got a little too high up, so then I had to bring this to bring me back down, and pretty soon I had 3 and 4 and 5 things in my system. And Bill talks about using sedatives while he's drinking, and it landed him on the rocks. So to me, that's, in my opinion, that's why I landed on the rocks so fast. In 7 years, I had completely destroyed and tanked my life. I visited jail numerous times. I visited, the worst time was when I had to go to the psych unit. I'll back up because the story before that is actually pretty good. So like Bill, I didn't get sober right off the bat. I had a lot of God shots and a lot of things that any normal, rational person would go, you know what, this is screwed up. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to reevaluate my life. I was living in a trailer. One of my friend's parents owned this trailer. I didn't really live there. I just kind of crashed there. It was one of those places that nobody really lived there. I think I know who the owner was of the trailer, but everybody just kind of crashed there, and feral animals crashed there. There's a lot of feral cats, a lot of cat urine in the corner. A lot of cat urine. You had to watch what beanbag you sat on. A lot of cat urine. I remember being at this place, and I really am envious of those people that are like, on Friday, January 2nd, back in and they know exactly what day it was. I have no idea what day it was. I think it might have been in the summer. I don't know what year. I think it might have been in the summer because we had the door open. That's my only deductions. the door was open, and I remember telling this story about my grandpa, and I'm like, isn't that funny? And I look up, and this old guy that's walking toward me looks just like my grandpa, and I'm all, speak of the devil, that old man right there looks just like my grandpa. And I'm like, shit, that's my grandpa. Pick this shit up. And I'm grabbing all the beer bottles and the cigarette butts, and I'm trying to, and I have like 30 seconds before he gets to the door. And I meet him at the door so that he can't see in too well of where I'm living. And about 2 days before that, I was crying. A bunch of my friends had left. They had gone back home to their families. And I remember being upset and crying and thinking, when my brother got heavy into alcohol's friends, drugs and alcohol, my mom yelled at my dad, and she said, you go pick his ass up and bring him home. And my dad went and found my brother. He was in a shitty trailer just like me. And my dad knocked on the door, and they didn't answer. So my dad's a big boy, and he grabbed the door and he ripped it completely off the hinges. And he told my son, my brother, he said, get your ass out here, get in the truck. And they brought him home, and they helped sober him up for a while. And my mom controlled it and tried to fix it. And I remember thinking, why doesn't my dad come get me? Every time I roll down to Utah County, I'll stop by, and I'm like, Dad, can I just get $20? Can I just get $20, Dad? I'll pay you back. I have no intention of paying you back. I haven't paid him back for years. Can I just get $20, Dad? And he said he'd seen all the, drugs are a lot of my story. I'm an alcoholic, but drugs are a lot of my story. And he said, you're just going to stick it in your arm. He'd seen all the marks on my arms. He said, you're just going to stick it in your arm. I said, Dad, I swear, I'm not. I'm not going to drink it away. I'm not going to stick it in my arm. It's for gas money, Dad. It's for food. It's for gas. So after begging and whining to him, he'd give me the $20, and of course I never spent it on food or gas. We stole gas. You can siphon that shit. There's no point in paying for that. So my dad knew what I was doing, and he never came and got me. And I remember sitting there crying in that trailer going, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know how in the hell I got myself into this situation. I don't know how I've made all of these decisions that I've made and got myself to the point that I'm at now. But I want out. Right? I remember thinking that. I want out, and I really wish my dad would come get me. And I knew he was never coming to get me. The thought clicked in my mind. It was like, Dad didn't go get my brother. My mom sent my dad to go get my brother, and my mom was dead. My mom died when I was 20, and I remember thinking, nobody's coming to get me. I either figure it out myself, or I'm shit out of luck. So that day, 2 days later, I'm telling that story about my grandpa. He's walking up to the door, and I meet him at the doorway, and he's like, me and your grandma wanted to see if maybe we could take you to lunch at taco time. Eat some tacos, and I'm, my stomach's roiling. I'm like, don't really want any of that. It's in the AM, so I don't want to put any food in my system right now. He's like, just come have lunch with us. Come have lunch with us. We want to talk to you. So they sat me down, and they said, for some reason, we have this overwhelming feeling that your mom wants us to come get you. This is my mom's parents. And I remember that being like a moment in my life, I don't know if I believe in anything after this life. I still don't know if I do. But I know that in that moment, what I was asking for and what I needed showed up, right? So I'd like to say that that's when I got sober, but I'm an alcoholic. So that was one of the pivotal moments in my life where I knew there was something else, something greater than myself, even though I didn't necessarily want to recognize it. I went back and stayed with my grandparents. They took me in and tried to sober me up for a bit. Unfortunately, my aunt lived across the street, and my uncle and my aunt used one of alcohol's friends, and my uncle drank. So I really just went from the frying pan to whatever. I don't know what the damn term is. I don't remember, but something into the frying pan. I continued to use and drink for a little bit longer, staying at my grandparents' house. That's kind of where the end of my drinking and using career ended. I remember being in because I kept pushing it, and alcohol turned on me, and I rarely had just one thing in my system. I had quite a few in my system, quite a few of alcohol's friends and alcohol in my system. And I remember my grandma coming into the room that she was letting me stay in, and she asked me a question, something about what type of sandwich I wanted or what meat I wanted on my sandwich. And I remember looking at her, and I couldn't determine what she was saying to me. I couldn't mentally understand English. I couldn't understand what she was saying. And I just remember standing there, like, mouth breathing, like, you know? That was a pretty scary thing for me. It was like a big wheel. You know, I remember my thoughts being like a big wheel, and I'm like trying to pick words out and try to put them in a sentence, and I didn't know how to respond back to her. And I finally was able to get the words out, and I just said, "Will you call my dad?" Like, I didn't answer. I didn't say ham. I didn't say anything. I just said, "Will you call my dad and ask him to take me to the hospital?" And that's when I checked myself into the psych unit, because I had gone into some type of psychosis. I remember being in that psych unit, and if you've ever had to go to a psych unit, if you want to stay, there's probably a problem. I wanted to stay. I was scared to death to leave. I was scared to death to leave there. I left there, and I'd like to say that I stayed sober. You know, I got a lot of self-knowledge, got a lot of information. I think I got another diagnosis, probably some more meds. So that's what they do. They medicate us. They give us a new diagnosis and medicate us, because I don't like to tell the truth on exactly what all I'm using and drinking. But I sure feel manic sometimes and depressed at others. So I got a lot of diagnoses. I came out of there, and I think I made it a few months. But I'd been arrested so many times that was catching up to me, and I ended up having to go into treatment. The first time I told the truth, you had to do this evaluation. I told the truth. I didn't know you were supposed to lie. Nobody had clued me in before that. So I told the truth. This is how much I'm drinking. This is how much I'm using. They court ordered me to 6 months inpatient, and I don't know how long after, but I was like, yeah, that's not going to cut it. So I went on the run again. And they caught me again, and this time, after I'd already heard that you're supposed to lie, I lied and said I barely drink anything. I barely smoked a little of alcohol's friends. And so then I was given 3 months of intensive outpatient, and I was like, that I can do. I can still have a job. I can do that. Okay. So I'll pay all my court fines, and I'll do that. And I started going to treatment, and what they did there is there was a couple people there that ran these rec therapy classes that for some reason I could identify with them. It makes sense, hindsight looking back, why I could identify with them, and I couldn't identify with the nice therapist that was trying to help me, and I just thought he was an idiot, and I didn't want anything to do with him. But for some reason I could relate to these two people that would come in and do rec therapy, and after a while I found out they're in recovery. They've been sober for a while. And so I could relate a lot to what they said and what they did, and they were a good example to me of how to stay sober and what you needed to do. And then they required us to go to either NA or AA meetings. So I started going to NA meetings because I thought I was just an addict, and I really wanted to be able to drink when I got done. And maybe a little weed. I thought those two things are minimal. Nobody gets in trouble. Nobody can even drive. Who even gets behind the wheel when they're smoking weed? I didn't think I was going to be a danger to anybody if I did those two things. They started introducing me to Narcotics Anonymous meetings and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I went to NA for a while. I appreciated the fact that they swore a lot and they talked about their dealer, but I didn't relate a lot. I didn't relate a lot to what was going on. I just got my name. I just got it signed off, and I kept going to treatment. They finally, I think my insurance ran up. I think the courts, not the insurance, but the courts finally stopped paying because I wasn't progressing. I was there for 14 months. They ordered me to be there for 3, and they managed to keep me for 14 because I was that sick. And I think they finally just decided, we can't keep justifying this shit. So they cut me out, and they sent me out on my own. And I tried to do it by myself for a few months. I thought I graduated, thought I was good to go. I'm done with treatment. I don't have to do this shit anymore. I'm cured. I'm just not gonna do that shit anymore. I'm just gonna chill out for a while. And what happened is I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't hold down a job. I was depressed, and irrational and irritated, and everybody pissed me off, and I couldn't function in society. There was eviction notices on my door. There was all the lights and water had been shut off, or the heat had been shut off, not the water. Still had water because they paid that. That was included in rent. So I took a lot of cold showers, and I remember being in like fetal position in my shithole apartment downtown, and I remember just crying like, why can't I do life? Why can't I do this? You know, I'm 24 years old. Why the hell can't I do this shit? Like, other people pay their bills. Like, why can't I? What is wrong with me? Why is every time somebody talks, I'm just violently angry at them for taking up space near me? Like I don't understand why I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin all the time, you know? And I remember being like, oh, fuck. For some reason it came to my head like, well, there's meetings around here. Maybe I'll hit a meeting, you know? And I found some AA meetings that were near me, and I started going to those meetings. And what I realized is that I'm not just a drug addict. I'm also an alcoholic. I have alcoholism. And I started going to those meetings, and what I heard from the front when people were talking about how they felt and how they thought was that I related to them. I understood what they were talking about. I'd felt that way. I know what it feels like to crawl out of your skin and to go to any length to pawn anything you have just to get something, just to get a drink, just to get enough to get that bottom shelf vodka. It doesn't matter what it is. I will do anything I can to get there. I know what that feels like. And I remember listening to those meetings, people talk about that, and I thought, I liked it because everybody talked about God and the F-bomb in the same sentence. And I was like, those are my people. I can handle these people. I don't do religion well, but if you can swear a lot, and I'm like, maybe their God might work. I could probably wrap my head around that type of God. And they all smoked and drank coffee like it was going out of style. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. I could probably do that for a little while. And I remember my grandma finding out that I was going to those meetings, and she said she would send my aunt with me, my cute little Mormon aunt, and she's like, you're not allowed to go back to those meetings. And granted, I'm in my 20s at this point. You're not allowed to go back to those meetings because you will find other addicts and alcoholics to use and drink with, so you're not allowed to go. And so, luckily, God uses our character defects to help us sometimes, so they don't always stand in the way. This time, my higher power used that character defect to make me continue to go to, because I wasn't that in love with AA. Sorry, I mean, you guys are kind of cool, but I wasn't like in love with you. I didn't want to be here like every day. But as soon as she said I couldn't come, by God, I'm going to come. I will be there every day, because you don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to tell me what to do. So, which also became a hindrance once I came into Alcoholics Anonymous and needed to get a sponsor, because sometimes they tell you what to do, and sometimes they make suggestions, and I didn't really want to hear any of that. But the first sponsor I got, if you've ever heard my story before, I was looking for something other than recovery, so I slept with her, and that wasn't helpful. I don't recommend it. The second sponsor I got, I don't recommend it. The second sponsor I got was a really nice lady. She helped me understand about being vulnerable with other people and to be part of a group. She really made me feel like I was part of a group. She didn't do a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous the way Alcoholics Anonymous is lined out in the book. I didn't realize that at the time. So at 5 years sober, I still kept needles in my drawer just in case I needed to off myself, because I was 5 years away from a solution and 5 years away from a drink. And mentally, I couldn't handle much anymore. When you don't have a solution, it gets pretty painful upstairs. There's a lot of shit going on and a lot of voices up there. There's a whole committee, and everybody's angry. And at 5 years sober, I kept those needles just in case I needed to off myself pretty quick. And I've been coming to these meetings for 5 years, sitting in the meetings. I'd share people. I thought I was regurgitating everything that everyone else was saying. But the problem was I hadn't worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I only thought I knew what AA was. So I slowly stopped going to meetings. I go to like a meeting a month. And it was only because my one friend, Chelsea, kept calling me, and she's like, She just kept picking me up. We're going to a meeting. And I'm like, I don't want to go. And she would just show up at my house, and we would go to a stupid meeting. I didn't want to go. And I remember thinking, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I've been going to that shit for 5 years. It doesn't work. But the problem was everybody carrying around that book that looks a lot like a book that people of a certain religion have. So I avoided the people that actually had the program. So I just went to the people that didn't have the program and smoked a lot. So the people that were actually doing the work, it took me 5 years to find them. I actually found them in this meeting. This was my home group 13 years ago. 13 or 14 years ago when it started. It had only been going for a few weeks. It was a brand new meeting. A couple of my friends called me, and it was down in a small, I think it's where the nursery is now. It was in that room down there, and the only reason I came is because two of my friends that I had known from around the rooms I hadn't seen in a long time, and they were like, come go, and then we'll go eat afterwards. And I was like, hey, I'll sit through this stupid meeting so that I can go eat afterwards with these guys because I haven't seen them forever. And I showed up at the meeting, and the only thing that I'd heard in meetings for a long time was just Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Wah, 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 wah. I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't connected with anybody. I couldn't hear what y'all were talking about. It didn't make any sense to me. I remember a lot of people saying, when I came into the rooms, I did this. When I came into the rooms, I did that. And I remember thinking, whatever I didn't do when I came into the fucking frickin' rooms, I obviously didn't do it right because I'm psychotic. And this lady got up and shared, and she talked about it, about 5 years sober, she felt this way. And I remember her saying at 9 years sober, she looked around the room and looked at everybody else and was like, is everybody else wrong, or is it me? And she was talking about what she was doing right then, right there, at that time period, what she was doing to stay sober. And I hadn't heard anybody in probably a good year. I hadn't heard anybody talk. And I remember going up to her and asking her if she'd sponsor me. She agreed. She asked me if I had a sponsor, and I said I did like a year or so ago. I've been sponsoring myself for a while. So I started meeting with her. She gave me a god-awful time period. I can't remember if it was on Sundays or Saturdays. It was like 8 in the morning. It was a horrible time. I obviously showed up late because I didn't give a shit about anyone else's feelings or anyone else's time. So I showed up late, and she shut the door in my face. Sorry, show up on time next time. And she shut the door. And I remember being like, it's a little rude. It's not rude to show up 20 minutes late. It's rude to shut the door on somebody. And I remember her explaining that to me, that I'm wasting her time and that I should value other people's time and treat them with respect. And that was one of the first lessons that I got from Alcoholics Anonymous, is to treat other people with respect, and to, if I say I'm going to do something, show up and do it, and be on time. I started working with her, and she took me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The 4th step that I did with her was completely different than the autobiography that I did before. We burned it. We sent it up to the gods. It was a little tobacco sprinkling. It was very not the one in the big book. The one that I did before, there was a lot of tobacco and sprinkling, and just saying, it didn't help. But the one that I did this time, when I met with her, it had 4 columns, and I got to write down everybody that I was pissed at. Super excited about that. I got to write down all the columns, and at the very end, I got to cover up those and look at where I was at in that relationship. And what I found out is that I'm not a very nice person. I'm very self-centered. I want what I want when I want it. I'll go to any length to get it. I will step on everyone's toes to get there. I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief, sober or drunk. I remember going through I got to 6 and 7. I remember doing 6 and 7 and asking for those things to be removed. My understanding of 6 and 7 back then was very minimal. But there was quite a few things that did get removed. I stopped being a liar. I started telling the truth, which really helps in the job and in a career. So I got to have employment for longer than 6 months. I did have a job for a while that I was there for a few years, and I would call my sponsor every day about how these people here were jerks, and I don't like them. Okay, I don't know how to talk in words that aren't my words. They're stupid, dumb. I don't know. It's not what I said when I called to tell her about them. They were beep, 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 beep. And I remember her walking me through all of those things. I mean, I came in here with a maturity level of a 15 or 16-year-old, right? Even though I'm in my 20s, I came in here like a child. And I really appreciate the guidance that she gave me, because she walked me through a lot more than the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. She walked me through how to be a citizen, how to pay my bills. She even did a damn budget with me one time, because I don't know how to pay my bills. She's like, well, I think you might have more money coming in than what should be. She's like, I think you'll be okay. We go through it. She's like, where's $700 going a month? And I'm like, no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me, like, she walked, and I don't know. I haven't done that with a sponsor yet. I've done a budget, but I really appreciated that she did that with me, because it wasn't something that was required, but it was very sweet of her to do those things and to help me become an adult, I'm sure my maturity level is probably late 20s at this point, even though I'm in my 40s, but I'll take it. It's a hell of a lot better than it was back then. What I do today is that, I've been around here for a few years, and there's time periods where I get stagnant and I don't want to come, and I'd much rather sit home and Netflix binge this new show that I found, or listen to that Audible book. I just want to finish it up, so I'll go to the meeting in a couple days. I'll go to that meeting instead, or I get a resentment in a meeting, and so-and-so open their mouth, and I think that they should shut the hell up, and if they're going to be a homework group member, then I don't want to be there either, and what happens is I build up a lot of resentments, and a lot of things get in between me and my higher power, and the good thing about this program is it is designed to get rid of all the things that block you from a higher power. We clean all of that stuff out of the way, and then we get back to, sometimes I can do a 10-step and get it cleared, and sometimes I don't even realize it's eating at me for weeks, and then sometimes I have to go back and do a 4th and a 5th, and I have to do a 6th and a 7th again, and ask for that stuff to be removed, and then act as if. But what I do today is I keep coming to the program, and for some reason, my higher power has given me the willingness to keep coming back. Because I don't know how many times that I thought I graduated from this thing. I don't know how many times that I'm like, well, I think maybe I might. I looked for a religion once. Seriously, I looked for like somewhat years in my sobriety. I decided I was going to join a different religion. I've done a lot of things that took me away from AA for a little while, but because I always want the answer to be something different. I do not want the answer to be God. I don't want the answer to be a higher power. I don't want the answer to be step work. I don't want it to be that. I want the answer to be the next shiny thing. I want that Mustang. I got the motorcycle. I really thought that was going to help. The shine wore off of that so fast. Now it's just sitting in the garage. Everything. I always want the next right thing, the next girlfriend, it's getting married. That was going to be the solution. I get to get married now. Woo! They're going to let the gays get married. I got married just because. My friend Megan likes to say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I wish we would have heeded that. I didn't, so I'm now divorced. It's a great life. Because, I get a lot of crazy ideas in here, and everything is God's will. She's God's will. Just so you know, she was God's will. That's God's will. I have a hard time differentiating what God's will is and what my will is. I heard someone talk about it the other night, but if I really want it, it's probably my will. Because God's will is generally something I don't really want to do. I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want to get off my ass. I don't want to share tonight. I already tried to get out of this. Tim texted last night, and he said something about he'd ask Ann too, and I was like, whoa, I just don't respond before Ann. Not a problem. I just make sure Ann calls first. So I put it off until in the morning, and then I called my sponsor, and I give a really good reason why I shouldn't speak tonight. And I don't know what all she said. There was a lot of laughing and poking fun, and then she said, "We'll see you tonight." So something along those lines. So we'll be at Stella's. So that's why I'm here tonight. But the point is that I'm current with my sponsor today. I talk to my sponsor. I show up to the positions their responsibility, things that I commit to. I suit up and show up to those. And I really hope that God keeps giving me the willingness to keep coming back, because my brain comes up with some brilliant ideas, and I never think that it's my higher power, but it's always my higher power. There's a difference between believing in your higher power and trusting in your higher power. And for a lot of years, I believed that your higher power could work for me, right? I saw it all in you guys. Y'all were staying sober. Y'all seemed like decent people. You put on clothes that didn't smell, that weren't covered in dirt and mud and concrete. Like, you dressed up, you looked decent. And I wanted to be like that. I lost my train of thought. So I'm going to end on that.